Hello, glorious beauties. I am Dragonflow, aka Frank, and this is my co host, Ozzy, the most beautiful dog in the land. So, I want to talk about the challenge young boys have, or at least I want to give you my experiences as some of the challenges I had as a young boy. So, I think if I would have been diagnosed, I would have been considered attention deficit disorder. I failed secondary one. I failed secondary three. I was about to fail secondary three again, and then I simply dropped out of school. And I want to give you my experience as to why this happened. Now, I was a high energy child. I remember when I was 3 or 4 years old, I would go to my aunt's and uncle's house and for like hours at a time just jump up and down the stairs. And I would make chaos in the household as well. One day I went to my aunt's house, I took her shoes and her scarves and I threw them all in the fireplace. So I was that kind of child. Eventually, this caught up with me. Like, I had a really hard time focusing and I had a really hard time paying attention. And it took me a long time to actually figure out why. And I'm happy because I went to school in the late 80s, early 90s. So they weren't administering medication yet. At 16, I dropped out of school and I figured it out right away almost. It was like a blessing. My friend's like, we have to join the gym. I'm like, let's join the gym. So I joined the gym and I figured out that I loved exercise. Like I was training 3 to 6 hours every day. I even started going to kung fu classes. I was weight training. And for the first time in my life, I started to read. Because of the poor academic upbringing that I had, and it wasn't necessarily the teacher's fault, I just had a hard time paying attention and clicking to the information. I actually couldn't read at 16 years old. So it would take me like 8 to 10 minutes to read one page, and I'd be lucky if I understood anything from it. But over time, I started reading more and reading more and reading more, and it started to be easier to read. I started training more and training more and training more. My focus got a lot better. It was amazing. Now, Jordan Peterson talks about young boys not getting enough rough and tumble play. So, rough and tumble play is kind of like fun but semi aggressive playing between boys. But in fact, when I was going to school, we didn't get any play at all, like very, very little. I remember we used to have gym once on a 6 day school cycle, which meant that some weeks there was no gym at all. And because my parents were really old school, I wouldn't be doing any exercises on the weekend. So some weeks we would be lucky if we get 1 hour of gym. For someone such as me who's 42 years old now and I could still train 3, 4 hours a day, this is just unacceptable because I need to move around. So there's something called a kinesthetic learner. A kinesthetic learner is somebody that moves through movement, somebody that likes to move around, and the thing that makes their brain click is moving. So I was not fit for an academic environment because that part of my life and that part of my needs weren't met. So this is one part of the thing I want to address. If you're having a hard time as a young boy, it could be you just simply need more exercise and you need to move around in tasks and endeavors that satisfy your body and mind and that challenge you in a positive way. Now, the next part I want to cover is why young boys versus young girls tend to have more problems in school, according to my opinion. And it is my opinion. And I base it on my personal experience. So laugh if you will, it might seem funny, but it's just a fact of what it was. When I was going through puberty, I'd be in a classroom setting and I'd literally have an erection for the entirety of the class, so 55 minutes. And this happened multiple times a day. So imagine you're not exercising and you're supposed to pay attention and you're just focused on how not to make people see your erection in class. Now, number one, boys tend to sexually sort of peak in that period of life, 13, 18, 13 to 22, etc., etc. Women actually peak sexually much later, and by that point, most of their academic studies are done. But here's another thing. Even when women are kind of in their ovulatory phase and they're really kind of hot, this lasts about 4 to 5 days out of the month. So a 13 to 15-year-old girl who's going through this, she's not sexually distracted all month long. She's distracted by her period and she has other physical challenges, and I don't take this away from her, and I have a lot of respect for that. But young boys with a lot of testosterone have a very difficult time focusing, especially if they're not exercising, and especially at that age, you're probably not having sex yet. So these are the two problems going in that I see with young boys. They're too horny for their environment, and I mean, they need exercise to cool that off, and not enough exercise to cool off the mind and the body and just like be mentally focused. Now, the other problem I see with young boys is because young boys are expected to be provisionary, some of them end up leaving the schooling system much earlier to start working and earning money. Women, because they are not in that provisionary role, could actually continue on in school and not feel kind of that guilt of making money much later. For a young boy to get some of the girls that he likes, he knows that he's got to make money right away. And so a lot of young boys actually drop out to go get this money so that they could impress some of the girls that they like. Now, again, these are not actual straight facts, but it's stuff I've seen with my friends, fellow young boys, and in some cases myself as well. So these are the three challenges, and there's other challenges, but these are the three main challenges that I see young boys having and why they're not doing so well in the academic environment. Number one, when their testosterone is very high, they have a very hard time focusing. Number two, not enough movement, not enough rough and tumble play, and not enough play in general. And number three, this underlying obligation to make money fast so that we could indulge in some kind of hierarchy and get some of the women that we desire. The last one is very important to acknowledge. The longer you learn about a craft and or focus on school and or focus on something that is going to give you a more substantial amount of money long term, the better off you will be. The more you could procrastinate your desires in the short term, the better off you will be financially in the long term. So I would say if you're feeling this antsy need to go earn money right away, try and develop more of a game plan and a way that you know you're going to earn more money long term versus some money short term, and then gas out and never really raise in the economic ladder. The other things is get a lot of exercise. Get as much exercise as you need. You are a physical being and you are meant to move. And the last thing is, if you're excessively horny, don't feel guilty. If you're a young boy, you have to channel that energy into things that are productive, which comes back to exercise and studying. Don't linger in that mental state. Namaste.